Welcome, everyone. Thank you all for joining us today for this event, Peace is Possible, an Alternative Vision for Israel and Palestine. My name is Tess McEnery. I'm the Executive Director of the Middle East Democracy Center, or MEDC. We are so proud to co-sponsor this event today with the Center for American Progress, Americans for Peace Now, the Center for International Policy, Common Defense, and Win Without War. We are all here today because Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a man who uses US taxpayer money to wage war against Gaza, and a man who has bragged about his success in preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state, including leading a resolution in the Knesset last week, is addressing a joint session of Congress in just about 10 minutes. The Prime Minister enjoys this honor of addressing Congress as the Israeli war in Gaza continues into its 9th month as a human rights and humanitarian catastrophe, a catastrophe that's impossible for anyone in Gaza to escape and impossible for significant aid or support of any kind to get in. And make no mistake, the US government is complicit. Its continued provision of military aid has allowed Israel to conduct the war as it has. And for all of these reasons, it is more important than ever that we hear from people who have experienced the devastation and injustice of decades of occupation and war, and yet are working to end human rights abuses and atrocities and mobilize to peace. So it is my honor to stand alongside dedicated colleagues that are surrounding you, who are working to end the unfathomable violence of occupation and war and work for true, lasting peace for Palestinians and Israelis. So we have a rich program for you today to fit into just about an hour. First, we're going to hear opening remarks from Representative Pramila Jayapal and Representative Jim McGovern. Next, we will listen to a conversation with Nadav Vyman, CEO of Breaking Silence, and Patrick Gaspard, President and CEO of the Center for American Progress. After that, Sarah Hagdusti, Executive Director of Win Without War, who is battling the Netanyahu speech to Congress traffic right now, so we hope she will arrive in time, will moderate a discussion between Aziz Abu Sara and Maoz Inan, Israeli and Palestinian advocates for peace, who have joined together to present a vision for a more peaceful, democratic, and equal future for Palestinians and Israelis. And finally, we'll finish up with a brief Q&A. So we're gonna go ahead and get started. We're so grateful for Representative Jayapal and Representative McGovern for joining us today, so we can hear from those who are in Congress pushing for a future free from constant bombings and famine and fear. We truly and sincerely appreciate your support. Representative Jayapal is the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus and a senior whip of the Democratic Caucus. She is one of the earliest voices in Congress to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, doing so on October 17th. She has also called for the restoration of UNRWA funding, has asserted that Israel is violating international humanitarian law, voted against the Israel supplemental, and called on the administration to uphold US law and withhold certain military aid. Representative McGovern is the co-chair of the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission and a longtime advocate and ally for political prisoners and human rights in the Middle East and North Africa. Alongside Representative Jayapal, Representative McGovern was one of the first members to call for a ceasefire, has also pushed the Biden administration to uphold US law, and has called for greater congressional oversight on the provision of arms to Israel. So please join me in giving a warm, warm welcome first to Representative Jayapal and then Representative McGovern.
Thank you so much, and this is a very tall podium, so I think you won't be able to see me if I stand right behind it, but I really appreciate you all being here. I want to welcome you today. I want to thank the Center for American Progress and my good friend Patrick Gaspard, who has shown such deep moral clarity in his calls for ceasefire and peace in the region, and whose extensive international experience and leadership is so critical to us in this moment. I also want to thank all of our co-sponsoring organizations, Americans for Peace Now, Center for International Policy, Middle East Democracy Center, and Win Without War for their work on this issue. And most of all, I want to thank our panelists today. It is a true honor to have you with us. I know some of you traveled a very long way to be with us and just got in, but we are grateful to you because you will bring us the stories of what is actually happening on the ground. You will tell us what we can do to be helpful as members of Congress, and you will educate us about what we can do together to make sure that we have peace and that peace is possible. I also want to just specifically thank Breaking the Silence, because when I went to Israel for my first time, my first year in Congress, you were incredibly important to allowing me to see the realities of what was going on, and from an Israeli soldier's perspective as well, and the human toll. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to recognize my colleague, Representative Joaquin Castro, was supposed to kick this off with me along with Jim McGovern. He has COVID, so he's not here, but I just wanted to thank him for his leadership. And to all of the members who are here today, deeply appreciate you being here and all of the work and perspective that each of you bring from very different places across the country to this work. Every one of us is choosing to be here to have a real discussion about how we get to peace, instead of at Prime Minister Netanyahu's speech. And I'm not going to speak to the many reasons that people have for not attending the speech. They each probably have their own statements and their own words. But I can speak to the unified belief that Netanyahu should never have been invited, and that he has been a major obstacle to achieving a ceasefire, to achieving the release of hostages, and to achieving any permanent peace in the region. Those are not just my feelings. Earlier today, I and probably all of my colleagues that are here today were at a very moving and powerful event that was hosted by J Street with the families of hostages that were taken in the horrific October 7th terrorist attack by Hamas on Israel. And to me, two things were very clear from that conversation. First, that these families and their communities are suffering deeply from loss, from pain, from suffering, and a deep moral pain. In the words of one of the family members who spoke, she said, "We seek life rather than revenge." I hope the presence of over 100 members of Congress from the House and the Senate at that event was a clear indication of our commitment to ensure that we do all we can to bring the hostages home, including the 8 Americans who are still there. The second thing I got from that conversation was, in the words of a family member of a hostage, and these are her words, I put them together, they came in different places, but they all make the same point. Her words, "Prime Minister Netanyahu, unfortunately, has failed to represent us, the people of Israel." These were all Israeli family members of the hostages. She said, "The return of the hostages should have been the first priority of the Israeli government, and the sabotage of a deal does not reflect the will of the Israeli people." And I thought that was important perspective for us to hear. We agree. And that is why so many members wanted alternative programming instead of listening to Netanyahu's speech, a place where we could think forward, even as we address the horrific realities of what this Netanyahu government has done. The complete destruction of Gaza, killing by Israeli forces of more than 36,000 Palestinians, 89,000 injured, the lack of focus, as we said, on the return of the remaining hostages, the increased violence of settlers in the West Bank, supported and encouraged by right-wing Israeli cabinet members, and the complete rejection, as Tess said, of any two-state solution in the latest resolution passed less than a week ago by the Knesset, with barely any opposition, stating that a Palestinian state would pose, quote, "an existential danger to the state of Israel and its citizens, perpetuate the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and destabilize the region," end quote. Complete violation of the Oslo Accords. As recently as yesterday, Israeli forces killed at least 70 people and injured many more in a new assault on Khan Yunis, while ordering 400,000 people to leave their homes and refugee camps. And the safe zones in Gaza are rapidly shrinking. According to the United Nations, almost 83% of Gaza is under evacuation or no-go zones. That means that more than 2 million people of Gaza are crowded into a tiny portion of the Gaza Strip. And Gaza is now surviving with only a fourth of the water that it had pre-October 7th, while 85% of children in Gaza have gone for more than a day without food. Many surgeons and humanitarian workers who have spent their lives in war and disaster zones around the world have said what they have seen in Gaza is worse than anything they have seen anywhere else in decades. So speaking for myself only, the deep horrors of what is happening on the ground are not external to us, because the United States does remain the largest backer of military assistance to Israel, assistance that has been used to perpetrate these offensive attacks on a civilian population that's been denied even the most basic of humanitarian assistance. This is not a conflict that we Americans have nothing to do with. It's not a conflict that we're being called to come in and mediate from outside. We are actually a part of this. We have responsibility and leverage to use in ensuring that we foster and forge that permanent path to peace. So this afternoon, we have a chance to hear from the people doing the real work on the ground, taking courageous steps towards a ceasefire, the return of all hostages, and the building of a true permanent peace, security, and safety for Palestinians and for Israelis. We have a chance to think collectively about what we as members of Congress, as organizations engaged in this struggle, can do in this moment and going forward. Because in the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., peace is not merely a distant goal that we seek, but a means by which we arrive at that goal. So I'm honored to be with you. Before I turn it over to Jim, I wanted to just recognize Representative Clyburn, who was critical in organizing that first event I mentioned this morning and has been incredibly helpful in organizing this one as well. So with that, let me turn it over to my friend and colleague, Jim Govern.
Well, I'm going to be very, very brief. Pramila very eloquently outlined what most of us here believe and think. I want to thank all those who helped put this together today. And I was asked when I walked in here by a reporter, why am I coming to this event? And my response was, I'm looking for some inspiration. I'm looking for some hope. I'm looking to talk to people who believe that violence is not the way, that the opposite is the case, that we have to end the violence and find a way forward to coexist. All of us here, all the members of Congress are here, are horrified by what's happened. We're horrified by the deaths of innocent Israelis on October 7th. We're horrified by the hostage taking. Our hearts are with their families. Pramila mentioned that we were at a briefing that our colleague Jim Clyburn helped organize earlier with the families of hostages. It was heartbreaking to hear them and to listen to the pain in their voices and their desperation for us in Congress to do more to help get their loved ones released. And we're horrified by the incredible death toll of Palestinians. I mean, children, innocent people caught in the crossfire. There doesn't seem to be any regard for the protection of civilians. I used to have an old history professor who used to end every class by saying the same thing. He'd say, remember, the world will not get better on its own. Class dismissed. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about when I took his class. I do now. You know, nothing changes for the better unless like-minded, good people come together and demand the change. There has to be a way forward where Israelis and Palestinians can live together in peace. You know, a reporter asked me that, well, why, you know, I thought you were a friend of Israel. I said, I am a friend of Israel. I've always considered myself a friend of Israel. But if a friend is doing something that I think is self-defeating, harmful to them, and I don't say anything, then I'm not much of a friend. You know, my critique, our critique of the current Israeli government, you know, is out of friendship and out of a concern for the future of Israel, to making sure that the people of Israel can live with security. And we also are here because we believe that every human life is precious. And the life of a Palestinian is just as important as the life of an Israeli. And we cannot forget that. So I thank everybody for being here. You know, we have some incredible members of the Congress who are here to listen to you, but we're here to be inspired, to learn, and to get some hope. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Representatives Jayapal and McGovern. Your words speak with passion and personal conviction in what we like to call humanizing a human rights crisis. And I think that brings us excellently to our next speakers. We're going to hear from Ambassador Patrick Gaspard and Nadav Weiman about the impacts of Israel's occupation on the ground in the West Bank, the current conflict in Gaza, and prospects for security and peace in the future. So, by way of introduction, Ambassador Gaspard is the president and CEO of the Center for American Progress. He most recently served as the president of the Open Society Foundations and has an illustrious career of public service, including as former U.S. ambassador to the Republic of South Africa. Nadav Weiman is the executive director of Breaking the Silence, an anti-occupation group led by veterans of the Israeli army that shed light on the realities of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Weiman served in the West Bank and Gaza from 2005 and 2008. Just a few weeks ago, Patrick visited Israel and Palestine and met with Nadav. So we're really looking forward to hearing from the both of you on some really timely issues. So Patrick, Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. Thank you so very much to Representatives Jayapal and McGovern for their stirring remarks. And thank you for all of our House representatives who made a choice to be here in this conversation. That's a choice. Human rights is a choice. Justice is a choice. Peace is a choice. I'm here fulfilling an obligation that I took up when I was at the Gaza border, met with an extraordinary woman who is a survivor of the Hamas attack. She lived in one of the kibbutz that is adjacent to the border. And after she conducted a tour and showed me where 64 innocent Israelis lost their lives and a dozen hostages were taken, she said, when you go back to the U.S., please pray for us, post for us, but also protest for us. And for me, this is a kind of an affirming protest. Also, want to add that she said to me very clearly, we need to help Americans to understand that our current government is not working towards peace and is instead doing everything they can not to be helpful to us in this moment. So that's why I'm here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to spend time again with Nadav. Nadav, the first question I'm going to ask you is a difficult one to ask. You and I spent real time together on the ground in Hebron, in the West Bank. I saw a number of things that were deeply traumatizing to me, but as I saw them, I realized that you were being re-traumatized. You were experiencing it all over again. I wonder, as I express gratitude to you, if you can give members of the House and others who are gathered here an understanding of your own personal journey, how you decided that you were going to become a long-term activist for peace, and that you were going to be somebody who was going to speak across difficult divides.
Thank you, Patrick, and everyone. Before I start, I just want to say that as an Israeli, I think that the number one goal of our government is to release all of our hostages and bring a ceasefire between us and Gaza, and enter humanitarian aid inside. That's the most important thing as an Israeli to say at the moment. So for your question, I became an activist because I was a soldier in the Israeli army. I'm 38 years old. I served 20 years ago. And I served in the Special Forces unit of the Infantry Nachal Brigade. And me and my team were snipers. And when you serve as a sniper in the West Bank and Gaza, you are inside Palestinian cities, towns, but more than everything else, you are inside Palestinian homes. Almost every night we did an operation that is called a straw window. Straw window is when you take a private Palestinian house and turn it into a military post. It means that you have to storm the house in the middle of the night, drag all of the family members from their beds, and put them in one room so they won't bother us. And then we put our sniping rifles, and me as the spotter of the team, I would put my thermal camera in one of the rooms, Then we start scanning the city. And during that time, if one of the family members wants to eat, to drink, to take medicine, to go to the bathroom, they need authorization from us because it's our house. It's not their house anymore. And store window could be 2 hours or 4 hours or 6 hours or 2 days, right? And after that ends, we just take all of our weapons and everything and we go back to the base. And when we go back to the base, the first time we did it, I understood that we ruined the Palestinian family's life. Not because we had information, not because we want to shoot at someone, because they told us this is a routine operation. You have to be with your sniping rifles inside the Palestinian city. And I was brought up on the idea that I have to protect Israel. That what I'm doing in the Israeli army is protecting Israel. And that wasn't protecting Israel. That was controlling Palestinians. And that's a different thing altogether. So you ask me how I became an activist. I served in the IDF. And I think that as an Israeli, we have the moral obligation to speak about what we did over there. It's not a secret that belongs to me as a soldier or as an Israeli. It's something that everybody should know that is happening almost every night. Straw widows like I did. But every day, we have checkpoints and the Palestinians giving permits and now fighting in Gaza and arrest. It's an ongoing occupation of 57 years.
I'm going to ask you in a moment about Gaza and how we ended up where we're at and what perceptions are on the ground. But I want to go back to something that you said to me when we were together in Hebron. You said that the mission that you had was to continuously mow the lawn. Can you help us understand what it means to mow the lawn and the purpose of that and the psychology of it?
Yeah, so as soldiers, we are getting commands to do all kinds of operations. But one of the main commands that we are getting as IDF soldier, it's called making your presence felt. And what does it mean, making your presence felt? So all of the Palestinians would know who controls them. Throw a stun grenade in the middle of a Palestinian village in the middle of the night, or build a makeshift checkpoint. So Palestinians won't know if they need to go through 2 checkpoints or 10 checkpoints on their way to work, or to school, or to the grocery shop. And stop Palestinians and taking their IDs and question them. And by the way, now we have a new system. It's called the Wolfpack. It's a facial recognition system. It means that I'm stopping Palestinians. I take a photo of their face with a cell phone, and an app tells me what to do, if to detain the Palestinians or to let them go. Right? So mowing the lawn, it means that all of the Palestinians, all of the time, should understand that the IDF controls them. It doesn't matter if it's a nurse from a hospital, if it's a 14-year-old kid, or if it's a construction worker. All of them would feel our control.
I recognize that as you took up your advocacy and your determination to bring Hebron to Tel Aviv, in your own words, that you yourself have been under all kinds of surveillance and attack, and I'm just impressed with how steadfast you've been through all of that. But you've also, and the people of Israel have also been steadfast through the astonishing, horrific attacks on October 7th. I want to talk about October 7th and Gaza and where we're at now. I understand that on October 7th, inclusive of the 1,200 Israelis who were killed, you lost a personal friend that day as well. I wonder if you can speak to that and your reaction to the aftermath of that attack and your sense of the collective punishment that the people of Gaza have now been subject to.
Yeah, so first of all, on October 7th, a lot of us lost our loved ones. And I think basically every Israeli knows somebody that was murdered in the Nova Festival, or one of the kibbutzes, or one of the 350 soldiers that died in the first couple of hours of the attack, right? I served in a special forces team, and my commander from the army, the day I finished my army service, he called me and said, Nadav, I know you, I know your political views. I just joined an organization, it's called Breaking the Silence, or Fighting the Occupation, you should join. And I hanged the phone in his face. Because I told him, no, I want to go to South America, to forget about everything. But he didn't let go. And eventually I joined Breaking the Silence, and he was my mentor in all of my first months in Breaking the Silence. And he was a resident of Kibbutz Be'eri, and he defended the kibbutz. He was a part of the first response unit in the kibbutz for 7 hours until he ran out of ammunition, and then they killed him. And for me it was hard because it was my mentor, right? But also he was a man of peace. Shachar was really a man of peace, and and felt revenge. I wanted to revenge. I was angry. I was so angry. But as an activist, a couple of hours later, I understood, okay, no, what I need to do is we need peace, right? And we need to stop the fighting over there. So that's something that I want our government, the people in Israel, would feel the same, to turn that bad energy to something that can bring us to a very good point.
So you and I are reunited here at the point of the visit of Prime Minister Netanyahu to our capital. It seems to me, after being in Tel Aviv and experiencing the massive demonstrations that were organized by the hostage families, and then the massive demonstrations for justice organized by political opposition, it seems to me that the Prime Minister is clearly on the back foot at home and perhaps has an agenda that speaks to that challenge in Israel, but also to a set of politics here. And I wonder if you have a perspective on that you can share with us.
Yeah, so first of all, we need to put everything that's happening with Gaza at the moment in context. And that context is that the main conception of Israel, that Benjamin Netanyahu is the leader of it, is managing the conflict. This is how we call it. We can build a huge wall around the Gaza Strip, and we can do military operations every couple of years, giving Palestinians humanitarian permits, and that's it. Everybody would forget about the occupation. And we can do the Abraham Accords and speak in normalization with the Muslim world, and that's it. And that exploded very bloody and harsh on October 7th, right? Our military strengths and technology, they won't stop it, right? And that's why immediately we start seeing the demonstration in Israel, right? In Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and in Haifa and Be'er Sheva. And those demonstrations got bigger and bigger, and every week, every Saturday I'm over there, right? And there are tens of thousands of Israelis that are calling for ceasefire now and releasing our hostages before anything else. So when Benjamin Netanyahu comes over here to Washington to address Congress, he's not representing the people of Israel. That's something that we have to understand. The majority of Israelis, and all of the polls shows it, we want a ceasefire and we want our hostages home. I think that, as the Prime Minister, he needs to defend us, the citizens, right? I was a combat soldier. I know that you don't leave anyone behind. I'm also an Israeli citizen. I know that our government needs to take care of us. And I'm also a Jewish man, that I know that every life matters, right? And Benjamin Netanyahu sees himself and his political way. He wants power, right? And that's why this war prolongs, right? 9 months we are inside the war. So what he's doing, what he comes to do over here is exactly that, right? He's addressing the right-wing voters in Israel more than the two houses of Congress. We saw his government, right? We have an extreme right-wing government in Israel, and he's afraid because if he will do a ceasefire and releasing our hostages, it means that the extreme right-wing parties would leave his government, right? Smotrich and Ben Gvir. And that's why this war goes on and on and on.
That's rather devastating. I want to go back to the West Bank with you, Nadav. At some point during our tour, you took me up on a hill, and you said very clearly you cannot understand the conflict, you can't understand the circumstances in the occupied spaces unless you appreciate both demography and geography. And as we round our way through Hebron, it was extraordinary to experience the kind of pockmarked map where Palestinian territory was absolutely broken up and not contiguous at all. And I wonder if you can help us understand what is going on, what exactly this means, particularly on the heels of the IDF civilian administration approving the largest land seizures last week since the Oslo Accords. I should also note that as I visited communities in the West Bank, I arrived hours after a United Nations-sponsored school had been bulldozed and after the homes of peace activist families had been bulldozed and were still smoldering, and there were children gathered up on a hill who did not know where they would sleep that evening. What on earth is going on here?
Yeah, so first of all, we have to remember that we have a government in Israel that in their guidelines, it says that only the Jewish people has the right to self-determination inside Israel, and they are actively working for annexation. So that's our government, right? And settlement expansion, it's only one of the things, because we are in a record-breaking time now in Israel-Palestine, right? It's the most amount of settler violence that we ever saw, right? The biggest seizure of Palestinian land since the Oslo Accord, but also the most amount of unauthorized outposts that were retroactively approved by our government, right? And they are illegal also in Israeli eyes, right? And what you mentioned when we were in the South Hebron Hills area, so a couple of years ago, the State of Israel and the settler movement, they cracked the system, right? You don't need to build a big settlement with lots of families and kindergartens and all of that. No. You take one family. It's a sheep herder unauthorized outpost in a remote area. We were in the South Hebron Hills area, a desert area. And it's like 4 or 5 people, but 200 heads of cattle or goats or sheep. And then they get hundreds and sometimes thousands of dunams or acres to go around with their ships. And we, the soldiers, we have to protect them. Doesn't matter where they are going. And they are very, very violent. In the last 15 years, most of the settler violence are from that sheep herders unauthorized outpost. And we were in Zanuta, right? Zanuta, a cave dwellers community, a Palestinian cave dwellers community in the South Hebron Hills that was abandoned after October 7th. Because the settlers took advantage that all of the eyes of the world and Israel were on Gaza or on Lebanon, and they unleashed settler violence. And Zanuta was the largest cave dweller community that fled. They left. Why? Because settlers were very violent towards them from the unauthorized outpost next to them. IDF soldiers protected the violent settlers, right? And the community left. About 400 adults and a couple of hundreds of goats and sheep, the largest one. And 18 communities fled since October 7th, right? So this is our government that wants to make the Oslo Accords disappear, right? Using settler violence, and we have to remember, settler violence or the settlement, it's not something that it's detached from Israel. It's a part of the policy. If I'm, as a soldier, I'm not allowed to enforce law on violent settlers, it means that settlers or violent settlers are a part of the system, are part of the mechanism of the occupation, right?
That last point is critical, and we should express thanks to our representatives here who pushed for targeted sanctions against the extremist settlers who were inciting this violence, and we appreciate their leadership on that front. Nadav, you and I have about 3 minutes left for this conversation. Here in Capitol Hill, they take their assignments very seriously. Representative McGovern gave us a clear assignment and said that he came here for some inspiration. When I left you in the West Bank, I felt incredibly inspired. You're talking about difficult things here. We were all dismayed by the reality just last week when the Knesset voted down a resolution for Palestinian statehood, calling that an existential threat to Israel. Despite all of that, what gives you hope? What gives you optimism? What inspires you in your engagement with Israelis and Palestinians? Give Representative McGovern that spark of inspiration that he came here for.
So first of all, I've got to say about the sanctions. Right? Sanctions were a very important step to show Israelis that impunity doesn't exist. Right? That settler violence is something that we need to address, and that was a very, very important step. Right? I don't want Israel to be sanctioned. I don't want to be isolated, but it was like everybody said today. Like we are allies. Right? When I fought in Gaza, I had an M4 and it was engraved on the side, property of US government, right? But that's only part of that friendship. The other part is saying, whoa, stop, right? And we need to go to the next phase of sanctions. And I've got to say something. Like, I'm doing this for the past 12 years, right? Talking with Israelis and internationals. And there's something that I understood quite quickly, I've got to say, that when you speak the truth, and when you take responsibility, like what breaking the silence, we're taking responsibility of what we did. We're saying to the Israeli society and to the world, this is what we're doing, right? We need to address this. And when you speak truth to power in front of human beings, they understand that. And that gives me power it gives me energy every week when I meet Israelis. It doesn't matter if we argue or not, if we agree or not, the conversation exists. And we can see what happened with the liberal democratic camp in Israel or with the anti-occupation bloc in Israel. Gets bigger and bigger because people understand that we cannot be an occupying power forever, right? 57 years, that's too much. our forever war, right? It's too much. And I've got to say, the last couple of days that I spent over here in Washington meeting with congressmen and women, and I understood that we have a lot of allies. And that's something that Israelis should understand, that over here we have a lot of allies that can help us bring an end to the occupation and bring peace to the region.
Nadav, when I was in the West Bank, I was overwhelmed by your courage today. I'm overwhelmed and humbled by your ability to extend grace to everyone, Israelis and Palestinians alike. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Nadav and Ambassador. The point of speaking truth to power is exactly why we're all here today. Thank you for raising that with us. For those of us who are doubtlessly live tracking on our phone the address to Congress, there have been lots of standing ovations for the opposite of what we're talking about here today. So I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce Aziz Abu-Sara and Maoz Inan to get our own standing ovation for a future of peace with Israelis and Palestinians. Thank you. Ask and you shall receive. That was wonderful. I'm so pleased. We're going to do a little bit of musical chairs because I want to welcome Sarah Habdusti, who is our moderator for our session with Aziz and Maoz, to the stage. First, let me introduce our speakers. Aziz is a Palestinian peace builder, author, mission-focused entrepreneur whose brother was killed by Israeli soldiers. His journey from revenge to peace building has led him to implement mission-focused initiatives in Palestine, Israel, and 60 other countries. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Maoz is an Israeli peace entrepreneur who has founded several peace-focused tourism initiatives with Israel and the Middle East. Since the murder of his parents in the Hamas attack on October 7th, he has become a voice for peace between Israelis and Palestinians. Thank you for being here. And finally, our moderator, Sarah, is the executive director of Win Without War and the Win Without War Education Fund. And importantly to me, I consider a close friend and a dear colleague. Sarah has spent more than a decade advocating for diplomatic solutions over failed military responses to crises. So, Sarah, over to you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much to everyone who is here today. I am going to ask you all a question, but I also want to acknowledge that when you share personal stories like yours, it takes a toll. And just to thank you for continually doing that, for having that courage. And I want to start there. The two of you obviously have such inspiring and harrowing personal stories about how you came here. And I would love for you to share them with us and how you came to work with each other.
Okay, so I'll start. Go ahead. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to all the House representatives. Thank you to all the co-hosting organization, and also I would like to thank Ms. Hala Harriet that also initiate and behind the scene help us being here and sitting and creating this event. So thanks for everyone. Like you said, I lost both my parents on October 7th. And I lost many of my childhood friends, their parents, their children that were killed or kidnapped to Gaza. And I was growing up in this region. My both grandparents were Zionist pioneers immigrating to Palestine under the British mandate and establishing 2 kibbutzes in the Negev. And I was born in my father's kibbutz where they raised us. And at the age of 14, we moved to Netiv HaSara community, the closest Israeli community to the border with Gaza, and where my parents were killed on October the 7th. And it took 2 days to my young brother to ask the family to send a universal message from our own personal loss that we are seeking no revenge. We are seeking no revenge. And the day after, Aziz contacted me on Facebook. We met only a decade before for maybe 5 minutes, and we weren't in any relationship or partnership or friendship. But when he approached me, it was so powerful because it's so difficult for one side to be empathized and recognize the sorrow of and the pain of the other. So when Aziz done it, I knew that I want a brother. I lost my parents, but I want a brother, and I want a friend and a partner to peace. Thank you, Aziz.
Thank you. You done?
It's for now.
Yeah, and on October 7th, 8th, when I heard about Maoz's parents being killed, and few others of my friends, who also some have been killed, some have relatives who've been killed, I decided to reach out because empathy is a powerful thing. And there's this assumption, I think, is if you're a Palestinian, you probably don't know any Israelis who were killed on October 7th. And it's BS. It's not true, because many, or some at least of us, do have friends on the other side and have very close friends. And those of us who work in peace, these been horrible few months because we have friends in Israel who've been killed, and I have friends and family in the West Bank and Gaza who've been killed, and you're trying to juggle between those two pains happening at the same time. Now, I grew up with that. I grew up in East Jerusalem. I'm Palestinian, and my brother was arrested, tortured, ended up dying as a result of being tortured in Israeli prison. I was 10 years old when that happened. He was 19 when he died. And at 10 years old, I didn't have the courage or the foresight that Maoz had in thinking that, well, choosing peace and forgiveness is the only way forward. 10 years old, don't think in that way. And go like, give me a few minutes to think about this logically, and it's just not how it works when you're that young. I didn't believe I had a choice. If somebody kills your brother, then the normal answer, if you're 10 years old, you want to hurt them back. And for the next 8 years, that was my focus. I became very active politically. I stopped almost going to school. I was protesting, throwing rocks, whatever you want to think of, until I went to study Hebrew when I was 18, and I did it out of necessity, not because I want to. And that was my first time I ever met an Israeli, a Jewish person who was not a soldier and who was not a settler and who was normal. And that's how my journey for peace has started. And ever since, what I've been focused on is two things, is how to bring down those barriers, those walls that's made of ignorance, of fear, of hate, and how do we understand that we have a choice. Today, you've made that choice being here. Members of Congress had a choice to go listen to a person promoting war, promoting revenge, promoting hate. I've also read a couple of the comments he said, or come to here and see an Israeli and a Palestinian who's saying, we are not going to accept those divisions, the world dividing us, leaders dividing us into Israeli versus Palestinians, but rather we're going to go into those of us who believe in justice, in equality, in dignity, in peace, and those who don't yet. And our mission here is to convince those who don't yet to join us. Thank you.
Your ability to find that grace and empathy is such an inspiration. And I will say, as someone whose kids have Muslim and Jewish heritage, seeing what you two do gives me so much hope that they will be able to grow up and genuinely be able to be their whole selves no matter where they go. The other thing that has been giving me so much inspiration lately, and I know you were both a part of this, was on July 1st, there was an event in Tel Aviv called The Time Is Now, where thousands of peace activists came together. And I would love for you all to share the story of how are you seeing a new peace movement form and the potential you're seeing there.
Thank you, Sarah. I would like to start with the main 3 lessons I learned since October 7th. And I learned them through dialoguing with Palestinians from Gaza, from the West Bank, and in the diaspora. The first lesson
is the word we already used many times today, is hope. And I learned that hope is an action. It's not something you can find, not something you can lose, or not something someone else will give you. Hope is an action. And it's very simple to explain how to make hope. This is what we are doing here, by the way. This is what we are doing here. We are making hope by envisioning a better future and by acting to make it into reality. And what we need to do is to check ourselves and to make sure our actions are effective. Because if they are effective, we're going to meet this future. We're going to make it into a reality. And if they are not effective, let's do something else. But this is what we are doing here, making hope. So I want to encourage every one of us to be an agent of hope, an agent of change, because even though we cannot predict the future, we can definitely change it. And this is what we are doing here. We are changing the future. So the first lesson is hope. The second lesson is the lesson of the future. The Palestinian and Israeli story has never been so far away from each other. Never. We see the same reality as you do. It has never been so far away. But our stories meet in the future. This is a miracle, but it really exists, this miracle. We meet in a future that is based on shared values, the values of dignity and equality, shared acknowledgement and recognition, reconciliation and healing, and of course, security and safety, which as Israeli, this is what's most important to the people of Israel, security and safety. While on the other side, what's important to the Israeli prime minister and his government is Jewish supremacy between the river and the sea. So let's choose what's good for the people of Israel, if you're pro-Israelis. But there will be no security and safety to the people of Israel if there will be no security and safety to the people of Palestine. And the third is most difficult lesson that I learned from our mutual friend and partner, Hamze Awaude. He said that we must forgive for the past, we must forgive for the present, but we should not and cannot forgive for the future. And ask myself, Maoz, if you want to be a good person like Hamze, who should you forgive? The immediate answer was, to those who killed my parents, Hamas. In my narrative, Hamas is extremist, fundamental organization that is killing and oppressing his own people and is killing innocent people. And it was my parents' bad fortune to be killed by the Hamas. But I was seeking revenge. I wanted to punish. I wanted them to be accountable for my parents' death. Those who promised us again and again, again and again, again and again, security and safety. The Israeli government. They betrayed us. The prime minister had time to come here to DC and be here for a week, but he had no time to call any of the bereaved families. None of his government members and the cabinet had no time to call us. They can travel all over the world, but they had no time to pay their condolences. So I wanted my feeling and seeking revenge was destroying me from the inside. I stopped functioning as a father, as a husband. I was just focusing how to make them pay. But after listening to Hamze Awaude, I've decided to forgive the Israeli government. Forgiveness is something you can do within yourself. It's not the reconciliation, which is a dialogue. I've decided to forgive them and focus and put all my energy only in the future, in partnering with Palestinians, with international community, and build a coalition that I hope Aziz will talk about it, to create a radical vision, a vision of hope, a vision of reconciliation, a vision of peace.
To answer your question more, I think what we understood as a peace movement, we got a little bit maybe too comfortable. We've warned for many years, and I know Breaking the Silence, other groups as well, has warned for many years that something like what happened in the last year would happen. I went back to articles I've written 15 years ago and says catastrophes will happen if the occupation continues. And yet, we became accustomed to violence. We became accustomed to people dying around us. And we are in some ways even today. Yesterday I'm listening to the news, 100 people killed in Gaza. it passes as a norm now, and that's terrifying. So the first thing that we have to do as a movement, and we are working on, we can't anymore accept the concept of conflict management. We need to work for conflict resolution. This idea, let's manage this conflict, let's put it under wrap, let's make sure the level of violence is just acceptable. That just cannot work anymore. And I believe it was President Obama right after October 7th who said, when I look at my term as a president and I think, what could I have done more? And that's a question we have to ask ourselves before, not after the thing. And he said, we all could look at what we've done and say, do we have blood in our hands? And yeah, he was absolutely right, and that's a question now we should ask ourselves, and as a peace movement, ask ourselves, what are we doing? The second, like Maoz said, is action is super important. Peacemaking does not happen only in conferences and in conference rooms. It's great we are all here, but it happens the moment we leave these conference rooms. What we do in every moment that we are out, how we treat, what kind of partnerships we have, how we treat those partners we have. And so even Israel and Palestine, I've seen things today that's really inspiring for me as a Palestinian from East Jerusalem, where for the first time, for example, on the Jerusalem Day, which is a horrible day if you're a Palestinian in Jerusalem, because a group of radicals, extremists, marched through my town, literally next to my home, screaming death to Arabs. And for the first time, I saw Israeli peace activists coming to protect us. And that was the first time it happened. And it was very moving for me, but also moving for my family, moving for my friends. And that's how you create partnerships. So you say, look, we helping each other, we protecting each other, we stand for each other. And the third is equality. Maoz mentioned how in our partnership, we focus on equality. And equality starts with the smallest thing. It's even in the language we speak to each other. When we were preparing for our TED Talk, Maoz reached out to me and said, you know, my parents were just killed. Your brother was killed before. How are you going to talk about your brother's death? And if you use the word killed, I'll use the word killed about my parents. If you use the word murder, I'll use the word murder. Let's make sure we use the same language, because there's no difference between a Palestinian loss in life and an Israeli loss in life. I've been a peace activist for a long time, over 20 plus years. I look younger than I am. At least I hope I do. Nobody has ever asked me that question in my work, in peace work. And I felt really moved that that is true equality, saying your brother's life is exactly like my parents' life. And so it starts with these things. It starts with the smallest thing, and then you can build and that equality. And that's how you build that movement. That's how you get thousands of people to come on July 1st to meet together and to say, it is time, because no other time is better than today to start working for peace.
Right. We know that the U.S. has significant influence on the Israeli government, both in terms of states and societies and the way we're all interconnected. And we also know that this particular government in Israel right now is, one can say, one of the most extreme we have seen in recent times. And we have the privilege of having so many members of Congress here today, many of whom have done a lot on this issue. And my ask for you all is, what else do you think we should all be doing in order to lift up the new generation of leaders, the people who believe in peace and who are already doing the work for it to move forward and make that vision into a reality?
It's a great question. Thanks. It's exactly what I want to share, because both Aziz and I are entrepreneurs. What we know is how to make a vision into a reality. Mm-hmm. And there are 5 steps into this mission. Is the dream that we shared. We all share the dream of peace, the values that we already shared. The third step is to build a coalition. And this is exactly what we are doing here. And we are so honored that you invited us. And we want to be your partners. We are on the same side. We want to broad and strengthen our coalition. And exactly this is what we are doing here. And this is what we're doing in July 1st event. For the first time in 2 decades, 50 civil society organizations, like Breaking the Silence and Standing Together that has been mentioned, and Committed for Peace, and Women Wage Peace, and many, many others. We group together and we synchronize, and it has never been done before. So building the coalition, the first, and that's our blueprint, roadmap. And we have 4 chapters in the blueprint. I will share the first 3. Amplifying our voices. Let's take photos together, clips together, share it everywhere. Peace is possible. Peace is possible, and this is exactly the words our former Prime Minister Menachem Begin said on the historical visit of Anwar al-Sadat, the president of Egypt, only 4 years after the devastating Yom Kippur War. And Menachem Begin said, we can prevent war, but we cannot prevent peace. But this legacy, it was lost. So we must renew it. The second is to build our legitimacy. Legitimacy to everyone here in this room, to everyone in our coalition, that we are the leaders of the future. What's happening there is the past. We are the future. So let's build this future. And the third and most important maybe to this whole year today, policy change. We must change the policy. From tools of distraction to tools of construction. Because again, as Israeli, and all my friends are Israeli, and many of the House representatives consider themselves as pro-Israel. But Israel, after 9.5 months of war, is as weak as ever. Israel is as weak as ever. And those who believe that bombs will bring safety and war will bring security, they are naive. They are naive. And if you continue with, the US will continue with its policy, it might be a disaster for the people of Israel and to the state of Israel. We must change the policy, and we are here presenting the voice of reason, the voice of logic, that in order to bring security and safety to the people of Israel, we must bring security and safety to the people of Palestine. And changing the policy, we must follow the G7 communique from last June in Italy that very clearly stated that the G7 countries will support the civil society within Israel and Palestine to promote peace resolution, conflict resolution, and a lasting peace. So we are here in DC to make sure it's not a dead word. It will become into a concrete policy. And together, we can shape and write this policy and to implement it on the ground. Because we are here to tell you, we are on the ground, we are working, we are determined, and we're going to win and going to make it happen. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll only expand on the points that Maoz said, because I think amplifying our voices is extremely important. Peacemakers are not usually sitting at negotiation tables, and this is a big mistake. The idea that you can make peace without inviting peacemakers to be part of that process, it just doesn't make sense. Logically, it doesn't add up. And yet, when you think of all the negotiations that has happened and all the work that's been going on in Israel and Palestine, peacemakers, people who are on the ground, people who know really what's going on, are usually the ones absent from being on the table. So that's extremely important to change. The give us legitimacy, I guess, point. Maoz and I were 2 months ago invited to meet with Pope Francis, who is now our coolest friend. And if you've met him, you know what I'm talking about. But one of the things he did that was incredible on the legitimacy aspect, he invited us, gave us the biggest hug possible, and then said, how can I be your ambassador? What do you want me to do? And he didn't just say it to sound right. He actually said it to do something. And so we handed him a paper with what we wanted. And one of it was the G7 communique saying, you're going to be there. They didn't invite us, but you are invited to that. It was in Italy, so the government in Italy decided to invite the Pope. And he took that paper and made sure that the G7 took what's written in that paper and made it part of its communique. That's taking... I think that's the kind of action we need, is people taking what we're talking about and making it happen reality. Look, I'm an American citizen and a Palestinian. I'd love to see the US invest much more in peace and much more in the organizations that are making changes on the ground. It's not happening right now. There is some money going for peace work, but a lot of it will not go to organizations who are making radical work because there is a fear that those organizations can be controversial sometimes. And I think that needs to change. Asking to end the occupation is not controversial. It's not anti-Israel, and it's not anti-Semitic. Asking to make reform in the Palestinian Authority is not anti-Palestinian. I'm standing for that as well. Asking for election and for change of leadership in both Palestine and Israel is not controversial. Saying what's wrong is not controversial. And so we need to change that. Right now, the US gives $50 million to civil societies in peace building in Israel and Palestine. Counter that, look at how much we give to weapons. And let's be honest, wherever, I mean, the Bible says wherever your heart is, right, where you put your money is where your heart, it's where you invest your time, is where you really focused on. If you put billions of dollars, and this year I can't even count how many billions have been spent on weapons versus how much we spent on peace, it is no wonder we are where we are today. So that is absolutely a change that's needed. I always joke that if you just give us enough money for 2 missiles in cash to peace building, it would be already a major change. And then the final thing, we are trying to make a change, political change in Israel and Palestine. And that does need people here in the US being part of that change. Don't think of it as Israel-Palestine movement, peace movement. Think of it as a global peace movement. We are together. We're not here to ask you for your thoughts and prayers, as in the US is common to say. Please don't give us your thoughts and prayers. We want you. We want you as a partner. We want you not just even as an ally, as one of us. That's what we're here for. I'm going to end it maybe with a story of Amos Oz I shared last night as well. And I thought it's cool for a Palestinian to share an Israeli author's story. And he said that if you're walking by a building on fire, you have 3 options of what to do. Mm-hmm. The first one is to run away. And when you look at what's happening today in Israel and Palestine, many people choose to run away. I don't want to be involved. I don't want to go to anything. I don't want to say anything. The thing, though, if you know how fire works, it spreads. It doesn't stay in one building. And you might think it doesn't affect me today. It will eventually. The second option, he said, is you create a committee to investigate who started and who to blame for this fire. I usually say, and I probably shouldn't, that Congress is good at that. But by the time we decide who to blame, everybody in that room, in that building would be dead. And the third option, he goes, you get a bucket, you fill it with water, and you throw it on the fire. But what if you don't have a bucket? So you get a cup, you fill it with water, and you throw it in the fire. But what if you don't have a cup? He goes, you get a spoon, you fill it with water, and you throw it in the fire. Now, would one person with a spoon be able to put out a fire? No. The answer is absolutely no. But the point is, we're not one person. There's 100 people here. If each one of us always thinks, what do I have? Do I have a spoon? Do I have a cup? Do I have a bucket? Maybe I have access to a hose connected to water source. What is it that I can do to make a difference? That's how change happened. And I think the one main thing we're fighting against, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Palestine, is people losing hope and people feeling indifferent and people feeling, I can't do anything, I'm only one person. And that is nonsense. Every one of us can do something. It might be as simple as sharing the stories. It might be being out in the streets like people are out today. It might be in money. It might be in coming and visiting, and it might be in supporting organizations like we heard earlier. But each one of us can do something. And it's a question for each of us to think, what is it that I can do? Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to again say thank you so much for all of your work, for sharing your stories. I know there are some days like today where it can feel like the voices for peace are in the few, but that is not the case. I know that at least from Win Without War. There are hundreds and thousands of activists who share this message. I know there are millions of people across this country and around the world who want to see this. So I am so grateful for your leadership, and I'm so grateful for all the leaders in this room who aren't running away from the fire, who have been grabbing those cups and buckets. And this is the change we want to see, and it is such a fantastic privilege to be here with you all to create it. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to hand over to our fantastic moderator, Tess, once again.
Thank you, Sarah. Aziz, Maus, thank you so much. You asked for investments in peace, and right now, Prime Minister Netanyahu is asking for more investments in war from the Congress. More and more investments in war. He has asked if we can do that, then he can finish things off. So with, let's say, that as inspiration for turning to peace, and many of us being spoons. Let's add all the spoons together, the spoons of water for peace. I want to turn it now to, we have about 10 minutes for Q&A. If anybody'd like to ask a question, I need to march over to you with my mic. So please raise your hand high, and I'll come over to you
Sarah,
for
don't
questions.
go.
If
Let's take a
Nadev
photo
could come back
together.
up,
Sit with us.
you all can answer at the table.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions?
Hi, I'm Robin Kelly. I represent the Chicagoland area. Sometimes when I've watched TV, I've seen all the protests in Israel against what's going on. Has that had no effect at all? Just like what happened yesterday, all the protests. But it's Israelis protesting against what he's doing.
So first of all, I have to say it doesn't. Yes, technology over here. Yeah. It does a lot. At the beginning, the protests were quite small after October 7th happened, and they got bigger and bigger. And as you know, as a politician, protests are a very important tool for mobilize people, but also for their political education. Because now, in the protests now, you can see people holding signs in Tel Aviv. I fought in Gaza, my friends died for what? And I never thought in my lifetime I would see those kinds of signs in protests, right? So I'm thinking about, there was a lot of talk about the future, about future generation now growing up in Israel, my kids now growing up in Israel, and this is what they're seeing, and understanding that democracy is something that you have to engage it, that you have to challenge our government and our public officials all of the time, and so I think we need to look at it as the long run. That's one thing. And the other thing, I don't know when you were in Jerusalem for the last time, but around Bibi's house, one of his 3 houses that he has, there are a lot of fences now and a lot more guards. And it feels like watching a movie about a dictatorship somewhere, I don't know where, that the leader is protecting himself from the people. And this is a message that a lot of people understand, that he's afraid. He understands what the Israelis are thinking and how angry they are at him. So yes, they are influencing the protest.
Yeah. Also to add on that, before October 7th, the protests were, should Netanyahu resign or not? Now the question is when. 72% of the population in Israel wants Netanyahu to resign. The question is only when. And because he lost Israel, this is why he's coming here. Because in Israel, he would get no standing ovation from no one. It's only here. And this is, again, I think I don't want to sound too harsh about, but it's those who are not with us in the room or listening to him, they have decided to choose the wrong side of history. The wrong side of history. What also recent polls show that 64% of the Jewish Israelis are in favor of conflict resolution, it's 64, the majority are already there, the establishment of a Palestinian state that will be sponsored and championed by the US, and for normalization with the Arab world. The problem is our politicians, they are no leaders. They are not changing the discourse, they are standing behind it. They are reading the polls, and what's so frustrating is that they are reading the polls before October 7th. Okay, well, the notion was still that the conflict can be manageable, but the people of Israel are already there. So now it's up to us to also create a political power that will represent the majority of Jewish Israelis, and we are on it. So it will happen sooner than later. Thanks.
I see two other hands for questions. We have about 3 minutes left, so I'm going to go 1, 2.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. I think I'm the only member here that is Jewish, and I'm proud and happy to be here and stand with you, and I thank Pramila for organizing this alternative event while Bibi is speaking. Do we have any reports, by the way? Is he done?
We can.
All right. But I do want to say this. I have a district that includes also a very Orthodox area in Skokie, Illinois, in Chicago, and have done a lot of press today. One of the things I said is that I am a proud Jewish woman, and I have most of my long life been supportive of the state of Israel. And that's why I am not going today. I am not going to be there. And I went on and on about how people in Israel, Jews in Israel, and we heard it from we just heard it at the meeting before us with hostage families, how terrible Bibi is representing the state of Israel. But I want to tell you something else, and I'm not griping, believe me, but I've also been the target of protesters who have shut down the street in front of my house, Genocide Jan, even after saying I'm for a ceasefire, occupying my office in Skokie, Illinois, and not refusing to leave. So I guess the only thing I would like to say is that I think an openness to allow people in to this movement for peace is very important. To be a bit careful. I think there are some people who have become targets that may not have always been exactly where the peace movement wants us to be. You know, as someone who throughout all my years has been for justice in Palestine, in the West Bank, and traveled with J Street, seeing the horror that's going on in the West Bank. But so I guess I'm just saying I'm proud to stand with you, to be with you, but I think there has to be clarity about who is ready to come over, who is there, and I have to tell you that some of what I heard felt to me also like anti-Semitism. I'm with you. I'm for the ceasefire. I've always been for justice for Palestinians. Let me in. And so you want to make sure. I'm not holding you responsible for the very people who have been about many times protesting against me. And but we want to be a little bit careful not to blame people who are allies.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of anger, and sometimes the pain and anger can manifest itself in a wrong way. We often say, like, people ask me if you're angry, and I say, absolutely, I'm angry. I know so many lives, so many people who've been killed recently. I'm absolutely angry. But anger is a powerful thing. It can be like a nuclear power. It can be destructive, and it can lead to hate, and it can be constructive, and it can lead to light, just like nuclear power can lead to electricity and light. the big umbrella that we need to create should allow us to be able to build that coalition that says we might not agree on everything. I'm sure if Nadav and I and Maos are going in every little detail, we'll find stuff we disagree on. But the most important thing is we agree on values. And that's why in our work, we thought values come first, the values of that a human life is equal, that our vision for the future is based on equality and on dignity and on safety. And if we agree on those, it makes our work much easier and says, if you agree on those values, even if we have some disagreements, we'll be able to work together.
I think that's important. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to say also that Rebecca Ballant was also here. She had to leave, but another Jewish member that was here as well. Yeah, I just didn't want to. Becca Ballant. Yeah. She had to leave a little early. But first of all, I just want to say thank you. What an incredibly... You noticed we clapped after every answer. It really, from the beginning all the way through, I think just an incredible amount of hope and inspiration, and particularly hearing your own individual stories and how you came to this work in the face of violence. I think that's one of the things that struck me is in the face of violence, you chose peace. You chose to reach out that hand. The question I had, because both of you spoke about, and you may have as well, I'm not sure, about the need for us to change policy and particularly around funding and the military assistance that we give. And one of the things that when we advocate to stop offensive military assistance, we want to protect Israeli citizens with defensive assistance, with the Iron Dome, with other kinds of funding, it is A, we're told it's very difficult to separate those two, and B, we're told that we need to be able to continue to provide that funding because of all the other threats in the region. And these are some of the obstacles that come up. We're also called anti-Israeli, we're called anti-Semitic, we're called a number of things for wanting to think about a different way to support peace in Israel and for Palestinians both. And so I guess I'm wondering if you have any advice for us on how to respond to that question. We do want to support Israel. We do want to support an Israel and a Palestine that is developed and fought for and designed and led by the people. If you all were the leaders there, I don't know if any of you are standing for office anytime soon, but if you all were the leaders there, I think it would be a very different situation. And so what advice do you have for us on how to frame that argument and be able to help people see that and I'm speaking just for myself, I believe that our military assistance is not helping Israel to be more secure. I believe that all the killing that we're seeing in Gaza is actually generating more anger that is going to turn into more violence. That is the nature of the world. That's what Gandhiji saw. That's what Martin Luther King saw. That's what Nelson Mandela saw. So how do we make that argument now in this moment? You all are on the ground. Tell us how to make that argument best.
I'll start. First, I think it will be difficult now, okay? But would love to have a relationship and to think about it for a few good hours, to sit around the table and dialogue and think about the best answers. I'll also go to the history of the US, that you already banned military shipment to Israel. It was Bush the son that stopped, basically forced the stop of the Second Lebanon War. It was James Baker, under the president of Bush the father, that forced the Madrid summit, as the first Intifada was still waging. I think it was Eisenhower in 56 that demanded Israel to evacuate the Sinai Peninsula just after they occupied it for a few days. So it's already within the American policy to stop wars in the region. So you need to practice it again. And also to force the Israeli politician to give answers about the day after. What do you want in the day after? Because if there will be no answer for that, the war will continue forever. So what is your plan for the day after? A concrete plan. So if there is no day after, we're going to see more sorrow, more pain, more casualties. And it's like it's going to be on all of us, and it's on our hands.
If I can add, so Aziz before that talked about not giving money to military support, but to other things. So when you and me been to Hebron a couple of years ago, when I had less gray hair, and I thought I said that. And when me and Patrick were in the field at the moment, I said it again. USAID, it's a very important mechanism that you have. Because when USAID would give humanitarian support to Palestinian sea territories that we destroy their homes, the IDF won't come and destroy that home again if it was built by USAID, right? And less suffering in the area, less friction, less violence. That's what we need to stabilize the area. Just for USAID to build a school, to build a kindergarten, right? That's something super, sorry, I know it's super specific, but it's a good first step.
I want to thank Mals, Aziz, Nadev. Thank you so much. Please give a round of applause.
Will I come?
Maybe we'll have a photo. Yeah.